Okay, so in this video, I'm going to explain how to combine a image of a physical model with an image of a site and add a couple little details like scale figures. Like that. So I'm going to use this image of this model, which again, you can see is taken from eye level, is taking with a certain perspective in mind. So it's imagining that we're at the bottom of a slope, sort of looking upward. You can see there's a sort of stepped ground to this model. So I'm going to show you how to bring this in, crop it, get it lined up. But you can, importantly, you want to take a photo of the model that is pretty close to the right angle to begin with. So we're looking at it, from kind of an eye level, from lower down, looking upwards, and so that's going to help us kind of integrate it with the angle of the photo that we have. So first thing I'll do is I'll open up Photoshop. I'm going to make a new file, and I'll make it 11 by 17 inches. That's about the paper size we want. Right, so then I'll bring in some of my images there. First, I'll bring in my image of my model, drag it in and hit enter. I'm going to right click and hit rasterize on that layer as well. And what I want to do here is mainly just crop out the stuff in the background. This is obviously taken in a photo studio, so the lighting is relatively soft. There's not harsh shadows. And the background is relatively simple, which is also going to help me crop it. In order to crop it, I'll use the Magic Wand tool. So over here on the left, click and hold. Magic Wand tool is the one at the bottom. And so a lot of these colors are somewhat similar. They're sort of grayish, white, off-white, that kind of thing. So when I use the Magic Wand tool, I can click in an area and select like everything that's sort of a similar color. Now you could actually use the Quick Select tool. That might actually be easier in this case. So like select an area. But, oh yeah, we don't opt. You could do it that way. But let's start with doing the base. Let's start with the Magic Wand tool here. And I'm going to just switch it to contiguous. And I'll click in an area and let's see. So that kind of not what I wanted. Try that one more time. So it's still kind of selecting into the roof plane there, the ceiling plane. Now you can change the degree to which, like, when you click somewhere, obviously these are two different colors. So we can change like how sensitive Photoshop is to selecting similar colors. The way we do that is by changing the number of this tolerance. Now, the smaller the number, so I'll change it from 32 down to 10. Now you can see it didn't select into the roof plane. It saw that as a separation between two colors. Exactly what we want. And then again, we can still kind of like select, this is fine. And I'm holding shift on the keyboard right now. Oh, I didn't want to do that. So that selected part of my roof. So I'll just hit Control Z, deselect that part, go backwards one step. And I'm holding shift. So over here, I'll do the same. And it's doing a pretty good job just getting the blocks of background selected. You might have to click a couple of times to get it all. And you can see there's some little specks and stuff, but that's stuff that's easy to clean up once we crop it. We're going to use the layer mask tool. Might be unavoidable here, but okay, pretty good. I'll take it. All right. So once we're ready, got better. I will go ahead and click we could do select and mask to kind of refine our selection. But I think we should just go ahead and crop it and then kind of clean up some of the stuff that didn't work great. So I'll click the layer mask tool. And remember, because we selected the background, it actually cropped out the model. So in order to switch it, all we got to do is make sure we're on the layer mask. So we're like selecting the layer mask. Go to image, adjustments, invert. You can also do that by hitting Control I on the keyboard. Okay, so now if we zoom into some of these areas, we can see that the edges are not so refined. So again, we could just clean that up by drawing on the layer mask. Go to the paintbrush tool, which is B on your keyboard. Remember, you can change the size of the paintbrush by holding Alt, right-clicking, dragging your mouse. If you go up and down, it'll change the hardness. You see the number there, which is like how soft the edge is. Okay. If I want a relatively high hardness, I can get some sharp edges. And then I could, so I'm gonna change into white here. So we want our swatches to be on black and white. Anything that's anywhere where we draw white, it'll make our model reappear. Anywhere where we draw black, it'll make. And we can also quickly flip those by hitting X on the keyboard. I would also kind of use this as a way to straighten. There's a little bit of lens distortion with our photo here. And I'm just clicking in one spot and holding Shift. I go on the layer mask, you can see what I'm doing there. Click one spot, hold Shift, and then click another spot. It'll kind of interpolate a straight line between. Okay. So actually, that's a good way. If I hold Alt and click on the layer mask, I can see all the areas where I'm not getting a clean background, clean cropping of my background. Paint over some of those areas. Add some stuff back where but it doesn't have to be perfect. Help us kind of situate it in a photo. Again, down at the bottom here, I would use this opportunity to straighten that. Okay. This is a little distracting. All right, good enough. Okay, good enough. Once we incorporate that with our image, we'll make it, kind of blend in a little bit better. Now, I can also adjust. This is sort of like, the camera was slightly at an angle when this photo was taken, and I could adjust that. So I would hit, then I would go on this layer, I would go to the rectangular marquee and right click and go to free transform, or hit Control T on the keyboard. If you want to kind of see what you're doing, you can also turn on the rulers. You can go to View and click where it says Rulers, and that allows you to drag down like these guides or drag them across from the show, like where straight is. So then I could take this and Control T, and I could um, scale it obviously up and down. Or if I right click again, I'll go to Distort. It allows me to drag the corners around and kind of get up here a little more. Drag that. I'm looking more at that column than I am at this edge. That's easy to kind of straighten out just by cropping it. I want to look pretty straight up. Getting it to look even. Looks pretty good. Hit enter. And I can crop this. Back on my layer mask, paintbrush, set my swatch to black, straight line. Okay, so that looks great. Now I can bring in my background image. So I'll go over here. Now you could combine multiple images from your site. Say that you have one that's like a really cool sky, and then one that represents more like what you want the ground or what the slope would be around your pavilion. So I could show you how to do that. I'm just going to drag this image first, which is for my ground. So I can just hit enter to place it. Put it behind the image pavilion there. Okay. No. And so it does look a little bit off in terms of the slope. We could do a couple different things. We could kind of cheat it by like making if I select the background image and I'll turn off constrained proportions and kind of smush it a little bit to make the slope look a little less, or the angle of the image to look a little lower. I guess what I'm really reacting to is when I look at the image of my model, the horizon's about right there, right? If I look at like where the lines sort of converge in this perspective, the horizon's kind of in the middle. Now, obviously we're looking at a mountain slope, so the horizon is actually in reality below where that slope is because we're looking uphill. But it looks a little bit like I'm looking at a lower angle than what this slope actually is. So I can cheat it a little bit. But the other way I can do this is I can just, and I don't want to do too much because I'll make the plants look weird and distorted, but I could also then crop out the background, the sky, I should say, and add more image of sky or add a different sky. And I can also just use the clone stamp tool, which is what I can double click on this layer. Before you can use the clone stamp tool, you want to right click and you want to rasterize it. I don't think you can clone stamp a part layer. So clone stamp tool. I'm just like, so some of this stuff we're not going to see, right? Because it's better. Behind our roof there, so you won't notice that. Pretty good. And then if I wanted to like incorporate it a little bit more to make it look like plants and stuff are growing up around it, what I would do first is I'll turn off or I'll lower the opacity of my image of my model here. so I can kind of see what I'm doing. Then I'm going to continue to make adjustments on my transparency mask to make even though the background's behind, right? So I could crop out the background, I could add new plants. Easiest way is just to go in here, crop out the actual image of the model. It looks like our cactus. Okay. So just little things like that really help it sort of read like it's integrated with surroundings. I turn the opacity back up. It looks. All right. Now there's another little trick here I'll show you. With our paintbrush tool, so obviously we know we have a little kind of circular paintbrush thing we can use. There are other types of brushes. If I click on that little folder icon with the brush on it, in here, okay, and sorry, actually go to brushes here, and in the top right corner, click the little three horizontal lines, click legacy brushes. And let's see here. All these different shapes and types of brush that make it easier to kind of blend stuff. Just not remembering exactly where the one I want is. It's under legacy brushes, default brushes. And there's one couple, actually, there's one that looks like grass. And what we can do with that is we can change the size up and down just like before. Sort of feather in stuff around the bottom. More natural. It does do this weird thing where it's like a gradient. You can change that in the settings, but another way to fix it. So then we would just go back to the default brush. Paint the bottom part black. Like peeking up over the tops. little bit soft, kind of feather it in. Then it really looks good, like you're a professional. Okay. So you don't have to do that part if you don't want. Nice little trick. Okay, so then there's a couple other things I want to add. First of all, I'm going to actually um, just alter some of the appearance of my pavilion here. I'll change first of all, kind of brightness and contrast. I like to use the exposure tool and the curves tool. Um, really helpful, I find, for kind of balancing contrast and lightness, brightness, and stuff like that. And then I also have kind of a different color temperature or a different, this is like a much more yellow, warm color I have going on my model photo. And obviously I have warm colors in the sky, but pretty cool colors in the ground plane. And then they're kind of more red than yellow. So I'm going to try and tune my colors a little bit on my photo of my model to make it appear as though it's in this actual setting. I would go to hue and saturation. That way, just a little bit, just a very subtle touch there. You can also we can dial back. You're gonna, oops, I'm sorry, I'm actually changing. So again, I want to make sure I'm just affecting that model photo, nothing else. I'll hold Alt on the keyboard and click between the layers to apply it. And I can stack these, it's fine. They'll still get applied to that one at the bottom. And I'll edit the image as well, just okay. Um, and then last couple things I want to add here. There's a couple things like the way that this roof plane is kind of designed is that it's meant to funnel water to the center and drop it down here into this little canal and then feed water into the landscape. So I want to show that. Um, so what I'll do is I'll use an image. So I downloaded this image off of the internet. I just Googled creek image. And I was looking for water, but water that looked like it had sort of a reflection of the sky, a bit of a gradient, and then it was in the kind of natural environment. So basically water that had a similar kind of a reflection to what mine has in my scene here. And so I'll just go ahead and drop that in, roughly get it where I want it, press enter. Then I'm actually just going to turn that off, turn the eyeball button off real quick. Okay. And then I'm going to crop an area within my little channel here that makes it look like the water is just in that little area. So I will this time actually just use the polygonal lasso tool. Trace the outline. You can go backwards on the polygonal lasso tool, hitting delete on. You can always. Okay, and then I'll make a layer mask on that layer. And now what I'm going to do is actually, now that I have it cropped, I'm going to unclick the little link between the layer mask and the image itself. What that allows me to do is rescale the image without moving the layer mask. Kind of move it around and see what area makes the most sense to have it in that. Okay. Oh, oops. Wait. Oh, yes. You have to click the area. Hold it maybe. Then I could do the same thing. Add a hue and saturation. Color. And sometimes you can do this thing where you hit colorize and it adds a little more color than what. Anyway, so you could mess with that all day, but and I would again I would crop out remove. And I would, instead of dealing with a little downpour, I would just add more grass. All right, fine. And then I want to add some scale figures. So you can find scale figures by going to the internet, searching it out, people or P. And I'll find, obviously people that seem sort of appropriate to the setting. Um, Save the image. Ah, not a real, not a real PNG. So easy enough to crop. Just use the magic wand tool. And then again, I want to kind of line up eye level, horizon line. Based on our point of view. Again, I could also give him some color to make fits in. Okay. So once you're done, you save it as a PSD, the Photoshop file. I'll call this. And then save it as a JPEG. Throw it in your InDesign file or whatever you want to do with it. You can also just put it directly into, you can put a PSD file directly into your InDesign file and it'll print just fine. Save it as to JPEG to save like a flattened version, which will be faster. All right. That should pretty much conclude this video.